I do, I ended up in a ditch. Nobody got hurt. And in my case, and some of your cases here, do you remember the first time you gave birth?
Mm-hmm.
That is something that you don't forget easily. So this is my first book launch, and I am so thankful that you're here. This goes down in my history as one of my firsts, and I'm so glad that I have you here with me. About 5 years ago, I was living a very blissful life here in Brownsville, and I started to reflect on the life I used to live, the loneliness that I felt in a relationship with a porn addict, the marriage of 25 years that was destroyed by a pornography addiction. And as I was reflecting on this former life that I had, other people were also in the midst of what I had gotten out of. And people encouraged me to share my story, that there's hope, there's help, and sometimes marriages and relationships survive that, and sometimes they don't. And in my case, I needed to move on. I remember the betrayal I felt. I remember feeling like he would choose porn over me. And I remember feeling like I was not number one in his life, that other women were. In fact, hundreds of other women were. And I was trying to compete with those women. And in that competition, I started losing myself. I started changing how I dressed, I started changing how I spoke, because I wanted to be sexier and prettier and everything to lure him back. And it didn't work. It didn't work. He had an addiction, and it did not work. So today, I want to share with you what I learned as I studied about the addiction and how I found out about other victims. I really felt victimized. I was so mad at the producers of pornography. I mean, I could have just like strangled them because I felt like they were strangling my marriage. But when I studied for this book, I found out that there are other victims. There are millions of other victims. Somebody is always hurt in pornography, whether it's my marriage, whether it's a child, whether it's somebody being trafficked and used for pornography. Somebody is always hurt. Every click, somebody is going to get hurt. Your brain will store what you've seen, and it will affect you. So there are many, many, many victims of pornography. My children were victims of pornography. My children helped me write this book. On page 63, I'm going to read directly what one of my children said, how he was affected by his father's pornography addiction. This is what he says. The effect of my father's addiction on me was that it stole him away from me. My mother talked earlier in this book about the superstar aspect of his family and him. He came from this, what looked like model family in the community. Imagine how that felt to a child. He's talking about himself. My dad was a brilliant guitar-playing, parachuting, surfing spy. This is not hyperbole. Those are all true facts about him. But something happened when I learned about his dishonesty and unwillingness to overcome his addiction. I started realizing there were holes in our story. Those Saturdays when it took him all day to shop for an item without coming home with one, or him inexplicably yelling at me for trying to get to a certain high shelf in the garage when I was just looking for a hammer, there was a general detachment and distance. He just felt like his father wasn't there. So I wrote this book painfully painfully. I had buckets of tears. And not just for the loss that I suffered, the loss of my children, the loss of my first husband's career, the loss of our marriage, but for the people that today are not free like I am free. There are millions of people who are not free. And us who are free will rescue them. We'll rescue them by sharing awareness. We'll rescue them by seeing them. They are in our neighborhoods. They are in the shopping stores that we shop in. And when you learn the signs of somebody being trafficked, you'll start seeing them. And we'll talk about that more in a few minutes. I'm going to share something on page 44 of the book. So many times, not all, pornography is involved in some way with child abuse, sex abuse, and sex trafficking. It may be that the perpetrator views pornography and fuels his lust with it. My counselor told me that to a sex offender, viewing pornography is like pouring gasoline on a fire. I was also told that people can be motivated to act out scenes they viewed in pornographic material with other people. I'm just going to throw a statistic out that is still shocking to me, and that is the United States, our country that we call the land of the free, is the #1 consumer of child pornography in the world. So I'm shedding a light on this so that we can change that. And I'm going to turn the time over to Denise now, who is going to share some clips from this movie. And this is a documentary of what's going on around the world. And you'll have questions probably afterwards, which we will field. And I think we have help in the back seat that'll also help us.
I think the movie is going to be self-explanatory for the setup, so I'm just going to go ahead and start it. We're not only going to watch excerpts of it, so we're going to skip through it. So you'll get an opportunity. It is on Amazon Prime, and it is on YouTube as well, isn't it? I believe it is. Yeah, it's both places. So.
What's the name of it?
It's called Operation Toussaint. Tousiant.
Saint.
2 S's.
Yeah, two
two,
S's.
like Toussaint. Toussaint.
Toussaint.
Shrivel up and die. Man points to the boy and says, "Look down the beach. Look down the shoreline. There's millions of them or thousands of them. There's no way that you can get them all back. Do you think you can really make a difference?" Young boy thinks for a moment, then just starts tossing starfish back into the ocean, turns to the older gentleman and says, "I don't know, but I know I just made a difference for that one."
Yeah, it's right here, right here, right here. Let's go. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thank you. Good morning. It's great to see this many of you out. Thank you, each and every one of you who came out today to support Utah's efforts in the fight against this horrible, evil institution that we call human trafficking. With over 40 million modern-day slaves worldwide, thousands of them throughout the United States. And many of you have known about this issue and have been fighting against it and working here for years, some even decades. This is an institution that's been around since the beginning of time. But it's really only now that the mainstream, that the public is starting to gain awareness. And so a little over 4 years ago, a dear friend of mine who was a superstar in the law enforcement community, who was a specialized agent with a very special set of skills, left his law enforcement career, everything that he knew, his pension, his security, to start a nonprofit called Operation Underground Railroad. They've done jumps everywhere throughout the world, rescued kids, and then helped them get to a safe place with their aftercare programs. Tim Ballard, are you here? Can you come on up so we can recognize you in Operation Underground Railroad?
I'll be very brief. To invoke history, in 1791, when the Haitian population rose up and destroyed slavery in their country. That was led by Toussaint Louverture. And then the abolitionists in America were watching. Frederick Douglass was watching and used that inspiration. And when slavery was finally eradicated legally, because it has not been eradicated in actuality, Frederick Douglass said, "Let us not forget the sons and daughters of Haiti, who are the true pioneer abolitionists of the 19th century." We'll turn the rest over to God and pray for us all as we take our flights this in the next 48 hours and execute this operation. And I am certain we will have success. Thank you so much.
Almost full traffic roads. Just waiting for your word.
Well, I think we should do 2 arrest teams. And pick them up as simultaneously as possible.
Yes, sir.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. We're here to discuss preparations for what we are so excited for. It's a day that we've waited a long time for, and we want to thank my colleague, Attorney General Oknam, who's here with his team, and then our friends at the DCPG, the Judicial Police for Haiti. Our philosophy is it doesn't matter what country the kids belong to or were born in, they're all our kids, and we want to protect all of them. But sometimes people in our own country ask us, why are you going to Haiti? Why does OUR, or why would the Attorney General spend time in another country? We need you here. And our response is, on global crimes like human trafficking, we can't pretend that it just happens in the United States, so we work on it here domestically so that we can protect our friends and allies and also protect ourselves so it never comes into the United States borders.
The U.S. creates the demand. The highest producer and consumer of child pornography is right here in the United States. So we know that it's our countrymen that are causing this. And because we look like those evil countrymen of ours, we can get access quickly to the dark, to the evil. And so the police asked, do you have operators who can go undercover into the belly of the beast, into the darkest places, and find these kids? And I said, yes, we do. Something happened to me once. This was after I'd quit the government and I was already with Operation Underground Railroad. And I was about to go into this compound in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. It was a trafficking center. It looked like an orphanage from outside. It had an orphanage on the wall. And so the police asked us to go in undercover, like we're gonna go buy kids. And I remember sitting outside the gate, and I always fight with this, you know. See, the problem with me is I have 7 kids. So any kid that we're looking to save, the minute I see that kid, oh, he's 6, I got a 6-year-old. Oh, he's 10, I got a 10-year-old. And so it's so easy for my mind just to put, you know, basically superimpose my kid's face, my child's face, on this victim's face. And I fight it, and I fight it, and I fight it. And that's how I would move on, because of those first kind of couple experiences that just almost destroyed me. But as I was standing outside the orphanage, something happened. I looked in, and I saw 28 kids. And that was more than I'd ever seen. And it happened again. oh my gosh, there's Blaine, there's Jimmy, there's Sam. You know, all my kids are here. And I remember being outside that place. And I thought, I'm not gonna do it. I'm gonna try to embrace this. I've gotta buy a kid. These people think we're here to buy kids, and they made it very clear within the first 5 minutes, you know we don't adopt kids, right? You know we sell kids. I'm like, oh, of course, yeah, that's why we're here, you know? And I see this little boy walk around from, you know, this dark outbuilding. He walks into the yard of this place. It's a dirty place. It's stinky. It smells like urine and feces and it was just horrible. And I went up to this kid and I picked him up. And he was my kid. You know, I saw my kid and he became my kid. So I'm holding him and my partner is negotiating with the bad guys about the price and, oh, I think you guys want that one, okay. And these horrible people are trying to, you know, they're telling us tips on how to evade the police and how they've done this before, how to get them out of the country. So I pick the kid up and I want to go into the dark kind of outbuildings that are around this compound, but I don't want to look like I'm being overly curious. So I have kids, so I know how to communicate with kids. I get him to point in the room, like as if he's going to show me something. I look over the bad guy, and I can tell they're like, oh, he wants to show that guy, whatever. So it worked. So I got in there, and it just got stinkier and darker. And as I kind of walked into the belly of this dark building, it got quieter and quieter as I got further away from the sounds of the street and the other kids playing outside. And the quieter it got, the better I was able to hear what was always there, right behind me. And it was the footsteps of this little child who was following me. And I flip around, and there's this little girl, and she's looking at me, and I don't want to cause more attention, so I give her a candy bar. Now again, these kids are starving. She takes that candy bar, and she looks at me, and then she looks right back at that little boy in my arms. And without taking her eyes off him, breaks it, like muscle memory, breaks it in half, and gives it to him. And I'm just thinking, this is not normal. And then it hit me. Oh my gosh, they're brother and sister. And she's horrified because how many Westerners have been here and picked up a child, and that child disappeared and was never seen again. And this is all she has. The only adults in her life are trying to sell her.
How old is she? 9? You're 9? How long has she been here? How long has she been here? 4 years.
Every 30 seconds, a child is sold. They're sold for sex. They're sold for labor. They're sold for organ harvesting, which is something we're now getting into. There's 6 million children that are forced into one of those 3 categories right now. Modern-day slavery really is the plague of our generation. When you consider there's more people enslaved today than ever before in the history of the world, and the world doesn't know. We need to wake them up.
Wow. These girls are getting that right away. ¿Cuáles son el plazo especial o las restricciones para las vírgenes? Porque en el pasado hemos tenido clientes que están llorando, no quieren. ¿Qué me habla? If there's one group that says that, we tell them, they'll go and they'll be like, okay, firing squad. 15. Me gusta. What the f is that?
It's a subject that nobody wants to think about or talk about. That's the part of the problem, right? It's so ugly, it's the worst part of humanity, and yet you've got to do something about it. It's kind of a catch-22. Nobody wants to talk about it, nobody wants to have it, nobody wants to talk about it, nobody wants to do anything about it.
Everybody, it drives me crazy how everybody is arguing on they would be the biggest abolitionist going back in time. Well, would you? Because you're not doing it now. And it's not that you wouldn't, you just won't look at it.
Because I imagine a lot of people like, oh yeah, that's good, man, that's awesome work they're doing. But they really, sit down, man, like sit down, sit still for 10 minutes, you know, and really look at it. If you did that.
It rocked me to my core to think about in this day and age, people, adults and children are being held against their will and sold by the hour to strangers to get raped, and this is their life.
People ask me, like, who are these dirtbags? Who are these people? And I have to tell them, it's anybody. Anyone you can imagine, anyone you see on the streets, it's professionals, it's doctors, lawyers.
Judgment Day for former MSU doctor Larry Nassar for sexually abusing gymnasts under his care.
You are a doctor. You took an oath to do no harm, and you have harmed over 256 women, and that is beyond comprehension.
The judge also said Nassar was able to get away with his criminal sexual conduct for 25 years.
Here's the thing that's mind-boggling, right, is that it's estimated that there's over 2 million children. I'm not even talking about the adults. 2 million children currently forced to be sex slaves, raped for money. 2 million. What kind of demand, and this is a scary question, what kind of demand justifies that number, 2 million kids? That's a lot of sick, twisted pedophiles.
Jared Fogle arrived here at the federal courthouse this morning. He had nothing to say. He is pleading guilty to conspiracy for receiving and distributing child pornography and also traveling out of state to engage in commercial sex acts with minors.
These guys want 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds. That's what they want. The answer to this question is not popular. People don't want me to say it. They don't want to talk about it. But what is happening in this country, especially in this country, the United States is the highest consumer of child pornography, or what I call child rape videos, because that's what they are. And it's the Western world.
Sheriff's always, we have a search warrant.
The highest consumers, it's us.
I'm gonna guess that you talk to you about your computer, okay?
And this is why. They're sex addicts. Their minds are twisted and sick to want this. I've interrogated dozens and dozens and dozens of these guys over the last 16 years that I've been working in this field.
Sure. No one wants to accept what it is. They don't want to believe it.
How did you get here? Why do you want this? Why do you want kids? And they all have the same story. I picked up a Playboy magazine when I was 12 years old. And then I got into more hardcore, and then more hardcore. And then the internet came along in my 30s. And oh my gosh, like I could just, with a click of the mouse, I could see anything I wanted. And then the stuff that I had enjoyed since I was a teenager started to wear off. I wasn't getting the fix. I wasn't getting the feeling that I used to get when I was just watching an adult man and an adult woman have sex. Barely legal. But that's when I started searching into the queue, to the Google string. Well, that's not doing it for me anymore. Okay, 16. I'm gonna stop there. I'm gonna stop at 16, see what happens. All of a sudden they're at 10. They're at 9. They're at 8. They're at 7. And you think you can find this stuff online? Absolutely. And that's what's creating this demand. That's why Johns get on an airplane and fly to Haiti and Colombia and Thailand, because pretty soon the child porn isn't doing it for them. And they need the child. This is why there's 2 million children forced into the commercial sex trade today.
Okay, we're gonna stop right there.
Let's applaud those people.
Yes.
Yeah.
I recommend that you finish watching it.
Yes.
It's, it gives us incredible information and then what happens. And we are gonna actually jump ahead, but for right now, what I wanna do, we need to turn on a little more light so we can see the data sheets. So we have a data sheet that, ooh, yeah,
There's
there's the
light.
light. That gives you a little bit of the information. But the first thing we want you to do is we want you to get your phone out. We want you to put in your phone the hotline for human trafficking. We're gonna talk about how to recognize it, what are the signs. These are professionals. I called that number, because I wanna know if it worked, first of all, right, before I tell you about it. And I had a discussion with them about it. So, put that number in, and why don't you tell us how to do, is it it's right here, 74,
The texting.
oh, the texting,
Yeah.
so there's two ways, all right. So the phone number is 888-373-7888. The number again is 888-373-7888.
Is that the texting, did you say?
That is, that's the number to call. That's the phone number. So, and it is,
The
human
Polaris
trafficking.
Project.
What's that?
Polaris Project.
Okay. That's the name.
That's the name. Put it in your phone. It's Polaris Project.
Don't put human trafficking in.
Don't put human trafficking in.
Oh, why? Do tell.
Human trafficking is one of those hot buttons that we look for when we're actually looking for traffickers.
Oh.
Put in Polaris Project.
Okay.
That is the name of the program that you're actually calling there. It's a federal program, yes.
You need to put something else in there to help you remember. That's what I would have to do, because I got a human trafficking, which is probably why when I say pornography on my phone, it refuses to say that word. It has blocked that word.
I love that.
It says like paranigia, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure I never said that. I did not say that. You can also text Thorn, H-O-R-N. So you can text Thorn if you see something, okay? Now,
I don't.
the number, let me tell you the number, 741-741. So you can text 741-741, and that would be a situation where I didn't try that, so I don't know if that means just if it's an emergency. I don't know, officer, do you know the texting? Is the texting only like, hey, I have an emergency, or I have something to report? Or I'm in a situation?
No, you can text anything you need to.
Anything you need to.
They will respond to
Okay.
you. A live person
Right.
will respond to you.
I think most of us, anytime we're seeing something we've never seen before, or feels uncomfortable, we're cautious, right? And so this is the number to call. Text them, call them. I think I saw this. I was in Italy, riding an electric bike with my husband. I came around a corner into a Bristow. I was just kind of walking around, and all of a sudden, here's this woman in the corner. Her cry for help was just, huge. And I thought, something is really wrong. This is 11 o'clock in the morning, and this gorgeous man comes up to her, sits at her table with wine and bread. And she's just looking at me like, please help me. So I know that, but I don't know what's going on. And I walk back around, so I'm just thinking in my head, what am I doing? What am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. And the Bristow bar owner sees me and stops me. He cuts me off. so I cannot come back around and talk to this woman. If I'd had this number, which I was able to call the United States, and maybe they have an international number, I could have called and said, here's this place, this is what's going on. Maybe they don't care, I don't know, but I needed to do something, and I couldn't sleep because I kept seeing her face. So when we're faced with these situations, and what our goal is awareness, that's all it is, right? We don't know if it's happening in your life. We don't know that it is or it isn't. We're not claiming that. But we're wanting people to be aware, because as was said just as we stopped the video, the human trafficking and the pornography fuel each other, and we know pornography is here. Okay, we know that is here. So I'm going to pass a couple of these around, and Laura and I are we're gonna just take some questions, and I'm going to give those to you. I guess pass some of those back. Let's just jump down to number 1. So we want to make this really simple. Educate yourself and your children on risky internet behavior.
One more. Is there one more? Perfect.
Yeah. You bet. How many turn off their internet at night? How many know you can do that? Yes.
Wow.
You can have full control of your internet on every device. You can go in. So you go to your provider, say CenturyLink, right? Call them up and say, I want to turn off my internet. They will tell you the website to go to. You go to that website, you put in a password, and you can see your neighbor is using your internet. You know everybody who's using your internet, right? You can see all the devices. And then you just shut them off, okay? Get control over what's coming in to your life on the internet. Be aware of signs, report them. We talked about that. Befriend parents of children who are at risk. We're going to come back to that. Persons who've been rescued from trafficking, befriend them as well. And then support organizations like what we talked about. Is the gal from Obria here? She's not here, okay. She had another organization, so. Find out how you can support, yeah.
I just mentioned one thing about the internet.
Yeah.
That I've learned. I have a daughter that's worked for Idaho State Police and
I'm missing
voices.
missing children, yeah.
And she's missing children. And of course, the majority of missing children go missing because they they are on the internet. And these pedophiles, this is their job, to what they call develop these sites. You know, they could be like they're kiddie sites, and parents are totally naive to the fact that there are people that are visiting these same kiddie sites who are grooming these kids to take advantage of them. And it's happening all the time, and it's not teenagers. Well, it's from teenagers down to, like you said, 6, 7-year-olds. And if you're not monitoring what sites your children are visiting, you're just, it's child neglect.
Sure, for sure, yes. In the purple?
I work with parents and teens. I'm Dr. Beth, known as America's Teenologist, and I have worked with a lot of parents who've made hard lines. My next door neighbor wouldn't even let her daughter, who was 15, look at my nephew. And I said kind of flippantly to my cousin, I bet she runs away in 2 months. And within 2 months, she ran away, and I kept up with the family and helped them and tried to help them. But they lost their daughter because of, if you are too strict, the kids have too many options from a place of running out. So it's so critical to stay in relationship and stay in connection and let your child feel safe enough that they can talk to you and keep
Yeah.
keep in connection. So it's two sides of this. It's the control of the internet, it's the control of the children, and it's also being in relationship with, so we don't lose them.
Laura's book talks about that. Dr. Whitehead was interviewed, and he discusses that very thing. That can I jump into that, or do you want to do it? Okay. He just said they're going to see it.
Right.
Have the conversation.
Right.
How did that make you feel? What'd you think? Don't put a shame on them that it happened and they felt good about it, or they're excited, or they were interested. That's really normal, right?
Yes.
But to teach them, but there's a place for all of that.
And to share,
some of it we don't want.
and to share these statistics with the teenagers. I have a couple of kids that are dealing with porn, and giving them these statistics will impact them because they don't see the downside, and they think parents are just trying to control them.
Okay, perfect. And so that, yeah.
My oldest daughter, they sat down as a family and talked, and they take the kids turn their phones into their parents when they go to bed, or when they go to bed at night, and the kids have not. I mean, I'm sure at times there's been some resentment, but they've gone along with it, and they've done it as a family, and that's just the way it is.
The relationship existed, right? The relationship, for sure. Any other thoughts on that?
One other tiny thought. My cousin caught her 6-year-old underneath a sheet looking at porn. So even a 5 and a 6-year-old know how to navigate a phone and find a porn site.
That note, I have a 5-year-old, and his father and I are very tech. We set hard limits, even at age 5. And right now, we can just hide things off the desktop, or we can set limits. We know what to do when he gets older and can figure out how to spell. That might be more complicated, more annoying to get into. But even at that young, and we tell him there is bad things on the internet. He loves YouTube, and there's so much. They're even considering why does it. So I'm constantly either watching him, or if I want a break, I have to go back through my phone to see what he's viewing, and we delete videos. But even then, there's some things I just flat out say, this is not good content. I know you think you like this, but this is something I think is a bad example. We have the conversations, as I'm not. But even on there's. One of the sites I go to watch videos has very scantily clad, very porn-esque images that I have to quickly, and so that's one of the traps of the internet. That's what they try and get you to click stuff, and that's bad.
So the relationship obviously is very personal, and you have to figure that out, whether it's with your spouse or with a family member or relatives, The thing to keep in mind that it is a drug, and Laura does talk about that in her book, and it is the new drug because it's a cheat. It's a cheat from the emotion, it's a cheat from the physical needs that all come with intimacy. And once the brain has cheated, we tend to be kind of lazy, like the cheats. Whether it's a drug or something that stimulates us, and we don't have to work at it. And then we get those hormones and we get all those endorphins without any kind of work. So there's a couple of things in here about the myths, pornography, and I think we're gonna maybe we'll